So, thinking about meditation practice in general, last time we covered the reason that I put the five foundations of meditation in the order that I did. I didn't cover all the reasons, I only covered some of the reasons. So, I covered the reason that the foundations are in the order that they're in from the standpoint of the bhavana krama system for training and concentration, that you overcome excitement or distraction. Again, technical terms, but for our purposes, we can use them interchangeably. Lethargy, laxity, dullness is the second problem. Third problem, subtle excitement, subtle distraction. Third problem, subtle dullness, subtle laxity, right? So we covered last time, how is it that you go from having no capability whatsoever to being a person who can maintain a perfect state of concentration for some period of time? And the reason I put the techniques in the order that I did, to briefly review, is as follows. Intensive breath should help you accomplish the first two stages of training and concentration, which is being able to get your mind somewhere you intended it to be, and then to keep it there, or most of your mind there at least, for some period of time. If you can't do that, you can't do anything else. In terms of the spectrum of techniques you could use to accomplish the first two stages of training and concentration, in retreat, very gentle techniques will work fine because you don't stir your mind up very much in between sessions. In the real world, with a very distracted mind and powerful distractions pulling your attention to the five senses and to mental content occurring inside the mind, a gentle technique, I've talked to people who said they've spent 20 years or 30 years using gentle techniques without very much result. And I've been quite pleased to learn that even just using this first technique of intensive breath, these people tell me that they're making more progress than they ever have doing gentle techniques in real life. And I think the thing that makes the difference is when your distractions are extremely powerful, a gentle technique doesn't have the force to stop your distractions. You just get bowled over. Unless you can sit for like 2 hours at a time at home, probably a gentle technique it doesn't have enough. You don't have enough time to settle your mind down to make a lot of progress with that technique unless you're already quite competent. On the other hand, if you have a technique like intensive breath where you meet distraction head on with something that's just as strong, really powerful, forceful mind, now you have some chance of overcoming the initial stages of distraction. So this is why Foundation 1, a 5-minute meditation practice, is there at the beginning. But there are other reasons. Foundation 1, once you have some skill, some competence, once you've been training for a while, is a technique that allows you to grab your attention and within 2 minutes or 3 minutes, get yourself into a reasonably good quality of mind. So it's a technique where when your mind's not behaving, welcome Dr. Doom, good to see you again. Hey House, welcome. It's a technique when you already have some skill to be able to bring your attention inside and to hold your awareness where you want to for some period of time, right? So even if you're an experienced meditator, if you're living in the real world, if you just got a divorce, if you just lost your business, if you just failed the big test and don't get to graduate from university, if something really bad has happened, a parent has died, a friend has died, whatever, you just found out that you're very sick and your life will never be the same. How do you generate a good quality of mind? Doing it with a gentle technique is going to be very, 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 very difficult. But if you have a forceful technique that can meet real life with the same force as real life, then you have this technique in your pocket so that when things get too bad, you can generate a good quality of mind as a practitioner. On the other hand, sometimes life's fantastic. You get the guy, you get the girl, you get the job, you pass the test, you get a raise, you move into a place that you always wanted to move into. You get the big publication you wanted. You get the big whatever, right? Good stuff, exciting stuff happens. But, or maybe even virtuous things. You met a great teacher. You went and saw Minga Rinpoche, right? Or you traveled to the Himalayas and met one of the cave dwelling yogis in one of the monasteries. Whatever. Incredible, right? The mind now is so excited that it won't do the practice. How do you fix this? Well, with great distraction, you can meet it with great force of willpower, right? So with this powerful technique, you can meet the great distraction of depression, anger, etc., 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 and generate a good quality of mind in a short period of time, 2 to 3 minutes, once you're an experienced practitioner. On the other side, when things are too exciting, too good, too nice, and your mind is totally going crazy because you're getting what you want in a conventional sense, you have a technique that in 2 or 3 minutes, you can generate a good quality of mind and do the main practice, whatever that practice happens to be. Okay, so house, I'm not sure what you mean by prayer. If you could expand. And Dr. Doom, I'll come right back to your question. Give me a moment to land the plane, as it were, so I'm sort of midair on this idea. So the other thing that training in this kind of attention teaches you to do is quite a few people within a relatively short period of time, months instead of years, will have non-dual experiences of their nostril. Welcome, Luck. Good to see you. They'll have non-dual experiences of having most of their attention on the nostril, such that it seems or feels that the center of your awareness moves forward and is in the same place as the thing you're focusing on, right? So because the technique uses a great deal of force and you're very intensely pulling your awareness towards the place or into the place where your focus is residing, this allows you to have quite a few people, not everyone, but quite a few people to have an initial experience of what it would be like if you could enter non-dual types of awareness, where it's obvious that the mind meditating on a particular object and the object being meditated upon can't be pulled apart, right? Because the experience can't be pulled apart from the thing generating the experience. The mind is generating the experience. The skin is stimulated by the breathing. The mind translates that stimulation into an experience and then experiences it. So the mind is generating the experience. So that's why they can't be pulled apart. So non-duality is a totally normal thing, but normally our mind does this. It goes, no, I'm over here, and this thing I'm experiencing is kind of over there, and they're not connected. So that dissolves in meditation if you have good concentration. And it's a totally normal thing. It's a beginner's experience, I often say, but not very many beginners have it because, I don't know. I'll try to be nice. So that experience can be very important for your training process. Certainly by the time you get to body scanning, that might start to happen. Definitely when you get into Mahamudra style practice foundation 4, that will definitely happen. Okay. So in terms of, okay, I'll come back to that house. So in terms of the next couple of techniques, why am I teaching body scanning next? If you're trying to make the mind extremely calm, right? Because we've accomplished the first couple stages of concentration, let's say, and we need the mind to be way more calm. It's going to mean that we need to sit a little bit longer. For most people living in the real world who haven't done a lot of training in concentration, just sitting and observing your breath, for example, for a short period, really, like 20 minutes or 30 minutes, is really tough. It's really hard to do. But if you train with a moving object, in other words, the mind is going like this, you're still training concentration because you're developing mindfulness, which is maintaining the active act of what you intended to do. And you're pooling your awareness. All of the awareness is in the hand, then it's here, and so on and so forth, right? So you're learning to pool the awareness still, and you're developing mindfulness still. So we're still on the same track, even though we're changing objects by moving through the body. The benefit of scanning the body is that the entire nervous system begins to calm down. So your practice stops being a mortal struggle between your out of control mind and itself, right? And the fact that everything else is not cooperating, like your body's too sore and this and that. And it starts to be this cooperative effort between your body and your mind, because the body is now being calmed down by the mind, and the calmer body is producing a calmer mind, and these two are feeding back on each other, creating a virtuous cycle. So as the body gets more comfortable, more calm, etc., the mind gets more comfortable, more calm, and it goes around and around. So as you do body scanning, the mind can get extremely calm. And because you're establishing that calm at the level of the body instead of just the level of the mind, the results last longer, because it's not dependent upon conscious effort as much, because you're changing your nervous system and your body and your flesh, which is then feeding back onto your mind just like it was during the session. So the half-life, the benefit of the practice, lasts well beyond the session itself, right? So this is why I teach it second in my techniques. Get a little practice in Foundation 1, get the mind to do what you told it to do, for goodness sake. Foundation 2, do a technique that makes the mind extremely calm extremely quickly and has a long half-life, a long trail of benefit from the actual time of doing the practice. Body scanning. I teach it in a standing and walking position mainly, because once the mind gets calm, it'll get tired and sleepy. This is called laxity. A lot of meditators who can sit for an hour or more and have done other kinds of practice, oftentimes they're falling asleep on the cushion. This is a classical problem. I discussed it last time. You can watch that video again if you'd like. So we teach it standing and walking. I teach it standing and walking, because if your mind gets sleepy and dull, you're missing half of the equation for a meditating mind. The mind is still, but it's not lucid and awake. A dull, sleepy mind isn't useful in terms of training your mind to do new stuff. You need a highly awake, lucid, discerning mind, right? So standing and walking. And then, because I've established all of this practice in your body, we're just going to piggyback off of that physical awareness and a body that's been made extremely calm, and jump into a practice of finally contacting for the first time one of the elements that makes up your being. So what is tactile awareness? Not an intellectual answer. Can you actually look at tactile awareness and go, yes, this is that awareness, and this is everything that awareness is knowing or beholding? If you can't do that, then you can't access that part of your being. So the first Mahamudra technique that I teach is 6 directions within the tactile field of awareness, because this is going to give you access to for the first time, to one element making up your actual entity as a being. And then we do it with vision, hearing, smell, taste. And then finally, once you have some control of the external senses, you do it with consciousness, like this. Then you have access to all of the major 6 things making you up as a being. Then when you get to rumination meditation, which becomes vipassana, you've already trained through my body scanning technique, the specific way I'm teaching you to divide up the body. You've already trained to analyze the body if you want to analyze it in terms of impermanence and selflessness. I've already given you a technique way at the beginning that trains you to eventually see selflessness or emptiness, at least to begin doing those kinds of analysis. Furthermore, because you can access all of the major 6 components making up your being, because there's only 6, since you can do that, likewise, when you get to the point where you're analyzing your being, now you have direct experiences of the 5 external senses and consciousness to actually analyze when you do things like analyze selflessness, emptiness, and so on and so forth. So this is hopefully starting to add up to something, right? This system is intended to take you a lot more detail last time of all the intervening stages, but this set of techniques is meant to take you along a pathway of removing subtler and subtler problems in your meditation while also training you to do the final types of meditation in any Buddhist system, at least, like those related to emptiness and permanence and selflessness. So this is my intent. There's also another layer there. If you wanted to do Chinese health arts, Shaolin 18 Lohan Palm, neigong, or again, my very limited knowledge of sort of tantric technology and so forth, I have baked into the techniques that I'm teaching the basic ingredients that make all of those things work. So I'll give you one example. Anyone who's done something like Vajrasattva purification practice from the Tibetan canon would know that you need to be able to recite something, visualize something, and become aware of the internal parts of the body simultaneously in order to do the practice. Notice what I've given you with the first technique in my system. Place the mind on the breath. Visualize the number. Mentally recite the number. So right from the very beginning of the system of training that I'm giving you, I'm training it in such a way that if you happen to find yourself some years later in a circumstance where you're doing 100,000 Vajrasattva purification practices as part of a nondro preparing for Tantra, for example, you've already trained the skill of visualizing, reciting, and becoming aware of the body as one unit, as one thing, right from the beginning. So you already have the basic ingredients you need right from the outset over here to start working on the most advanced practices in every system of meditation that I've encountered, which is a fair number of systems. Okay, so in brief, I'm sort of secretly teaching you how to do a whole bunch of really advanced, difficult practices. By the way, also Mahamudra style practice is also preparing you for tantric practices. It is explicitly, according to the systems from which it comes, a type of practice that prepares you to do the final levels of tantric practice in the Tibetan canon. So this series of practices is baked into each one are lots and lots and lots of layers and lots of thought, so that if you encounter other things in your career as a meditator, you'll go, oh, I actually already have the ability to go through my body. I just need to add this piece, and then I already have this practice. Or, oh, somebody wants me to do just sitting and rest my mind in this condition. I've already trained to rest my mind on every one of the things that can occur in any 6 of my sense fields, no problem. Okay, you want me to do that with a subtler state of mind? Well, let me generate that subtler state of mind, and then I already know how to abide in the nature of a mind. I've done a lot of that work already. You see? So this is sort of the extra layer that I don't talk about too much because people find it overwhelming. But when I say that the techniques overall have been packaged together to prepare you for any meditative system, and this is why I call them foundations, I really mean it. I haven't encountered any technique anywhere that won't be enhanced by a really, really solid ability in these areas. And I've tried to pick techniques and package them together that are specifically aimed at people living in the real world with jobs, kids, other responsibilities, etc. The only thing I don't teach, as I said, and this will be the last bit and then I'll go to questions, so I do see you, Houseman. The only layer that I don't teach beyond a little bit of standing practice is working in great detail with the body and the energy body. I teach stuff that'll prepare you to do that, prepare you quite well, but you get sort of like with my standing practice, and body scanning practice and 6 directions practice, you get a huge amount of additional benefit if you can extend that into deeper and deeper layers of your physical being. And if you can transform the physical unit to be more like the result of meditation, then meditation becomes easier. So your body, your physical body, changes when you train in meditation. If you change the body to be more like the result of meditation, the mind becomes more meditative automatically. See? So this is the reason I've partnered with Neil Ripsky to do the 18 Lohan course, for example. And Dave, you can put the 5 foundations thing in there. You can put Lohan in there. Again, last thing, the techniques that I'm teaching are meant to also help you if you wanted to go into those kinds of arts that take you way deeper into the body, subtle body, energy system, qigong, neigong, or the Tibetan versions of these kinds of practices, right? So I've designed it in this way on purpose so that wherever you end up, there will be benefit. That's the idea. Okay, so let me jump into questions and then we'll do some practice. Okay, let me start with Houseman's question about prayer. No. Yes, okay. So Houseman's asking if prayer can help increase stabilizing meditation in difficult times or good times. Yeah. So I put things like prayer, although you could have prayer as along the whole path, and that's the traditional thing for most systems, right? If you were doing it religiously. I teach in a secular way for the most part when I teach this class. But if you were going to do this as part of a religious practice, you'd probably have prayers before, and all of that does help prepare your mind. That being said, if you were secular and you weren't going to prepare your mind with prayers, and even if you do prepare your mind with prayers, even 2 minutes of intensive breath or 3 minutes will change the quality of the remaining hour of practice that you have. And that's the point. And then if the mind's still not behaving and you want it to be even subtler, even quieter, then do 10 minutes of body scanning and then do your main practice. So if you had an hour to do your practice, 5 minutes of prayers, a few minutes of intensive breath, 10-minute body scan, and now you get 45 minutes of high quality practice instead of sitting there 30 minutes with a screwed up mind and 10 minutes with an okay mind and 20 minutes with a sleepy mind, right? That's the point. These are techniques that will help you get more out of your current practices, including your prayers. Just by way of example, this is pretty cool. So when I did a retreat with some of my students, the retreat is actually online. The video and audio is terrible quality, but did a retreat with my students, some of whom have been with me now for about 5 years. And one of my students in that course, in that retreat, was Eastern Orthodox. And we got to the portion of the practice where we were meditating on consciousness for the first time. And he had a bit of a taste that consciousness is formless, that it doesn't have a color, doesn't have a shape. It doesn't seem like a physical thing in terms of direct experience. It's just this formless, shapeless, right? And so he had a bit of this experience. But every evening he does his Eastern Orthodox prayers. And I said, so when you do those prayers, I said, if they're like the Buddhist sort of prayers, then you generate certain feelings when you do the prayer. And he goes, yeah, that's right. And I said, okay, so you generate love during this prayer and you generate sort of devotion. I said, okay. So when you generate love and devotion, I said, do it like we were doing Mahamudra, where you, instead of just focusing on the words, you let your mind completely suffuse in the mental state that's been generated from the prayer, love and faith, right? And you completely absorb your mind with just a corner of your mind doing the recitation so you don't fall over, right? Completely absorb in the formless condition of consciousness, because that's where the feeling of love and faith is occurring. Completely absorb there as much as you can and do the prayer while absorbing into a formless condition of faith and love. he did this and he sent me a message and said it was the most profound session of Eastern Orthodox prayer he's ever had in his life. Right? So, in terms of my own way of teaching this, I put that over here with rumination meditation. Why? Because even though, yes, you should be doing prayers along the way if you're in a religious tradition, should be part of what you're doing. That your prayer as a practice of cultivating yourself, for example, to follow the current example, in love and faith, right? Your prayer becomes so much more powerful and profound once you have these other capabilities in meditation, once you can generate concentration, once you can get the mind inside the body, once you can abide on the different types of consciousnesses that you have, once you know what your central mind is like, your actual consciousness, rather than just your senses, your ability then to do really profound stuff with prayer becomes totally different. So I put that over here, but yes, prayer can and should be happening all along the way if you're a religious person. And it can, yeah, good prayer for various reasons can help you get through difficulty and things being too good. Okay. So, David, good to see you. Okay, House, how do you get these steps or techniques? Oh, yes, that's been shared. Okay, Dr. Doom asks, is timing your meditation good or bad? And how many objects should you focus on? Okay, good questions. So it depends on the technique. So for 5-minute intensive breath meditation, the first foundation that I teach, it's a 5-minute practice. So it's good to time it. You want to limit the time so that your mind can feel comfortable exerting absolutely the highest intensity of force and effort possible for that short duration. Because you're working that two muscles, as I sometimes say, the muscle of grabbing the attention and placing it on the object, and the muscle of the muscle of keeping the attention pooled there once the attention has been pulled in, right? So this is something that if you try to do it for 30 minutes, the quality will go like this. It sort of ramps up relatively quickly within a couple of minutes, and it'll go like this, and then it'll start to decline. And you want to stop here when the quality is high. You don't want to keep going until it sucks. You want to focus on absolutely highest quality of concentration you can get, not duration, with this practice. This practice is meant to help you accomplish the first couple stages of concentration. There will still be a little bit of distraction in there. If you want to get rid of that little bit of distraction, there's another technique that's more profound for stilling the mind that works really well if you can already do the first technique. Does that make sense? I was talking to one of the students about this today. He said, well, I'm sitting there and still some distractions in Foundation 1. And I went, yeah, it's not meant to completely get rid of your distractions. It's meant to give you enough skill that you can get your attention in somewhere, make the mind calm enough that it'll mostly stay there, and then you can do another technique that will really begin changing your mind in terms of distraction. Okay? So for those practices where it's like a body scan, you don't need a timer. Just do a body scan that you know will take 10 minutes-ish. Or a body scan that you know will take somewhere between 25 and 35 minutes-ish, right? So you just do the activity until it's actually finished. And that goes for a lot of other practices too. Some of them, roughly you want to do a certain amount, and some of them you do it until the actual thing happens. Okay, so let me change over to a different mic and we'll do a bit of practice. Right. So let me change, here we go. Okay. That should be the new mic. It'll sound a little funny. All right. So when you're doing Foundation 2, which is a body scanning practice that then evolves into a meditation where you're keeping your attention on 5 points inside the body. Uh, the intent is then to go from the initial skill of simply being able to keep your mind a little bit sort of pooled, let's say 70, 80% of the mind pooled in one area while you're counting, right? To being able to take that ability of pooling the mind somewhere and move it through the body so that the mind is staying pooled, let's say, for 10 minutes. But you're taking the place where the mind has pooled and you're moving it through the body. So you're still training in concentration because the attention is pooled and the mind is in the active act of not forgetting what it intended to do, right? To use the proper definition of mindfulness. Your mind is not forgetting what it intended to do, and therefore you're building up the skills relevant to removing distraction. You see? Here I'm defining distraction in a slightly different way than you might find in the classics because I think it's important to note that yes, the big problem you have is that your attention wants to jump off the object or the activity in this case to something else, but also the skill that you need to build up when you're training in concentration is being able to pool the bandwidth of your awareness all in one place. So, for example, if you could do it 100% and pool your awareness on your hand, literally everything else in the universe, from your perspective, should disappear except for your hand. Now, that's very, very difficult to do, but you do it in degrees. So, let's give that a try. And we will just work on that particular skill of pooling the awareness somewhere. Okay. So, for the sake of being able to get the maximum amount of our awareness into one place, we'll do it seated. Oh, I suppose. Oh, no, that'll be fine. So, just get your legs and so forth in whatever position suits you best. At this level of the training, it's not so important. It only becomes important sort of at advanced levels of practice. The only thing that's actually important at this stage is that you basically want your weight somewhere between the perineum and the tailbone. That's where the weight on the bottom should be hitting. So you'll also feel your hip bones on the cushion. So a bit of a triangle between the hip bones, the and the perineum area. And then from here, if you put your attention on the top of your head towards the back third of your at the top of your skull, in the middle of the top third, and it can actually be helpful to use your hands because where you think it is, if you touch, just take a finger and touch where you think the center is and don't move it once you've touched there, you'll probably find that where you think it is before you touch it isn't where it is. And so you want to actually find that place that actually in reality is in the middle back third of the skull and then place the attention in that area. Okay. So now, if you can, try to balance the That area there, the middle back third of the top of the skull, right over top of the triangle, or you could say, sorry, not over the top of the whole triangle, but over the top of the perineum area. So there's a line then that runs through the central area of the body that goes from the middle back third of the skull down to the perineum in front of the spine. So you're not actually resting in an important sense on the spine, although physiologically you definitely are resting on the spine. But in terms of your posture and arranging your posture, you're not arranging it based upon the spine. You're arranging it based upon this central column, which isn't the spine. And so if you do your best to place your awareness on that back middle third and the perineum at the same time, this is a different way of explaining how to set up the posture than the one that I normally give. Just sort of try to create more space between the perineum and that point. So try to make that distance as far as you can, while very importantly, while keeping them directly over, while keeping the top one directly over the top of the bottom one, if that makes sense. And so you'll notice that, for example, if you try to pull your neck backwards like a military person, that point is no longer over the top of the perineum, right? So you have to keep the head slightly forward and arched in its natural position, or it doesn't live over the top of the perineum. But if you tip the chin downward, to transition to my normal way of explaining this, if you tip the chin downward, notice how tipping the chin downward does pull that slightly higher, doesn't it? Slightly further away from that perineum area. Likewise, if you relax the chest slightly, you'll feel that your back, because the chest going down means the upper back goes up. If you slightly relax the chest down, you'll notice that the back of the spine rises, and with it, there's a little bit more space between the perineum and the top of the head. Now, if you let your tailbone fall just a little bit more than it is now, not too much, just a bit, you could also think about this as your lower back. So from the hips, between the hips and the lower ribs, that sort of area. If you just sort of relax that area and let it fall a little bit, again, you'll see that the perineum and the top back third of the skull get a little bit further away from each other. And so, like this, you can elongate the spine. And if you can hold this position with some degree of attention, then it will become clear that this is actually an extremely comfortable position to sit in if you already have enough flexibility in the hips and so forth. And for those of you who have done my standing posture work or who have done 18 Lohan, this is exactly the same posture of the spine that you have for all of your Lohan work and the standing posture that I teach. So this should show you the connection between having a comfortable seated posture and the things that you do with standing work of various kinds. Okay, next is the position of the shoulders. So if you relax let's say, if you can, put your attention on the back of each shoulder. So if you just try to relax the back part of the shoulders, just try to really relax all that tissue on the very back side of your shoulders. And then slightly raise your elbows out to the front so that your elbows aren't hanging directly to the side of the body, but are hanging slightly in front of the body. then you'll feel, hopefully, that by bringing the arms slightly forward or the rotating the elbows slightly forward and relaxing the back of the shoulders, you'll feel that the arms become a counterweight to the natural momentum of the body, which is probably to fall backwards. If you just left the body alone, it would probably crumple and fall backwards, right? And so by having the elbows slightly elevated and forward, then the arms, if they're relaxed at the back of the shoulder, they become a counterbalance, a counterweight that requires almost no effort to maintain. Now, keeping your elbows where they are in space, just as an experiment, take your hands, keeping the elbows where they are as if the elbows are fixed in space, and you can place them on your knees, for example, and feel how, as long as the elbows stay where they are and the back of the shoulders stay relaxed, it's fairly comparable to the first one, right? It's very similar. And then if you take your hands and just rest them over your thighs and calves, which is another classical position for training and meditation, if you keep the elbows roughly where they are in space and relax the back of the shoulders, once again, the counterbalance is roughly the same. And if you take the hands, keeping the elbows where they are back to the shoulders relaxed, and you place them in your lap in any position, counterbalance is basically the same. So some of you may have wondered why I say it doesn't matter so much what you do with your hands, because the main function is, what are you doing with your shoulders? What are you doing with your elbows? And is it counterbalancing the natural momentum of the spine to fall backwards from this position or not? That's the main thing. So from here, if you once again connect to the back third of the skull and the perineum area, keeping the elbows slightly elevated, back to the shoulders relaxed, and just try to lengthen again from top to bottom. Some of you might feel that there's a sort of stretchiness that you get through the spine. From slightly elongating it, it sort of stretches from top to bottom. And that stretchiness, if you relax the back of the shoulders and the top of the shoulders, that stretchiness connects into to at least the elbows, right? And so if you want to sit for a long period of time, you just relax the body onto that stretchy feeling. So what's holding the body up is a counterbalance of mostly white tissue, connective tissue, that isn't actively holding your body up. It's just slightly stretched. And that dynamic tension in the body of a relaxed, slightly stretched, springy feeling ends up being what holds your body in the position. So this is part of the quality of a body that's already attained to concentration. So if you were already a great meditator, I have been told, this is part of the transformation that occurs, that your body is able to sit for extremely long periods of time. And part of the reason for this, again, at least from what I have gathered from many years of training, is that it's resting in this kind of position. The muscles are relaxed, the white tissue is stretchy, and that's what's holding you in the position, or at least is part of what's holding you in the position. Okay, so now we'll transition from just talking about posture to talking about 5 points of meditation and pooling your awareness in one place. So let's do just a brief session of intensive breath. For those of you who are new, intensive breath, you are counting in between the out breath and in breath, and you visualize the number in front of you, and you say the number loudly in your mind. So, in between the out breath and in breath, or at the very end of the out breath, depending upon how your breathing is going, you're going to count the number one inside your mind and visualize the number one in front of you at the level of the eyebrows, about the size of your thumb. It can be white or black, but white will probably be easier. You don't visualize a background, and you only say it and visualize it for a fraction, maybe 1 second in between the breaths. So you're going to count from 1 to 7 and then 7 to 0. So breathe in, breathe out 1, breathe in, breathe out 2, breathe in, breathe out 3, and so forth. Place your mind on a patch of skin inside your nostril or near your nostril. So breathe in. Wherever the sensations are most intense, place your attention on the actual sensations. Don't label them, don't analyze them, don't visualize the patch of skin. Just actually feel the tactile sensations. Place the attention there with great force, ignoring the other five senses. The only other thing you're going to do is count. And as soon as I say begin, do it with great force, as if everything you care about is riding on the next couple of minutes. Okay? 3, 2, 1, begin. Okay. So just let your mind relax for a moment, and I'll give you instructions for the next part of the practice. So, in my body scanning technique, I divide the neck into three sections. The reason for this is that quite often in the modern world, because of a number of different reasons, we have very poor neck posture, and we have a lot of anxiety quite often as modern people. And that also gets stored quite often in the neck and the tissues around the tops of the shoulders. So when I teach body scanning, I divide the neck into three portions because it's worth spending extra time inside the muscles of the neck because there's so much going on there as a modern person. So let me detail this just a little bit more while we work on this skill of pooling our attention. So when I say the bottom third of the neck, I don't mean your collarbones and I don't mean your scapula, which are part of the functional movement structures for the shoulders. However, there's tissues on your neck and connected to your neck that are connecting to the tops of the shoulders. And I think also the tops of the scapula, they also run down the back, all the way down between the shoulder blades, in my understanding of physiology. And then, of course, in the front, they run down and they connect, I believe, also underneath the collarbones and so forth. So when I say the bottom third of the neck, I mean the cone, let's say, of tissue that connects the neck to the tops of the shoulders and runs underneath the collarbones. Now, in terms of where the most of the problems are for a modern person, I think most of the problems in the neck are in the back lower third of the neck. So, for that reason, why don't we try as an exercise in pooling our attention to get as much attention as possible into the lower third of the neck? And then once we have the attention in there, we'll borrow from the Chinese health arts a technique called neigong, which is just actually just means internal skill. So first we'll get the attention inside the neck and then we'll do something with what we find there. But for now, just try to get the attention in and don't do anything with what you find. Okay? So first just mentally divide, try to find all the tissue on the back third of the neck. So it'll be sort of half of a cone connecting the lower third of the neck to the tops of the shoulders, centered around the very large bone, the very large vertebra that connects the neck to the top of the spine. And just let your awareness soak into that part of the neck until ideally almost everything else disappears. Don't move, just observe. Okay, now that your mind is inside, without wiggling the shoulders, without tensing the shoulders, without physically adjusting the shoulders in terms of contracting something, just ask the tissue, mentally ask the tissue to relax. Just ask it to become
heavy and relaxed. Okay, move to the middle third of your neck. Since your mind is already pretty well inside your body, just ask that to relax. Relax everything that doesn't need to be there to hold the neck in the position that it's been in for all this time. Don't shake your head, don't wiggle your neck, don't contract anything, just ask whatever's there to relax. Now move to the upper third of the neck. So everything from the point where the vertebra contacts the bottom of the skull, the joint at the top of the skull, the upper cone of the neck, let's say. Just ask anything that doesn't need to be tense or doesn't need to be as tense as it is. Just ask it to relax and become heavy without tensing anything, without physically adjusting anything, just mentally adjusting. Okay. Now, just to wrap up this experiment, again, we were pooling the attention in an area, and then we did a little bit of neigong. Just slowly, slowly turn your head one way and the other, and just feel the difference in the quality of your neck. Now, hopefully, you're noticing that the neck is a bit easier to move than normal. So, like this, if you can pool your attention somewhere in the body, then you can ask that part of the body to do something different than it normally does. And now, hopefully, since we're transitioning back to a normal way of sort of interacting, you open your eyes, move around a bit. You'll notice that even without conscious effort involved anymore, the neck is should remain relaxed, right? Or as relaxed as it can be at the moment. So the benefit of being able to pool your awareness somewhere and change the quality of some part of your body, for example, doesn't depend on you continuously exerting effort in order for that part of the body to remain transformed. And since your nervous system correlates anxiety with tense neck, tense upper shoulders, probably if you investigate your mind, if you have a bit of anxiety normally, probably you'll find that there's a little bit less anxiety. So, like this, becoming more aware of the physical body and being able to adjust the physical body can begin to have feedback on your mind. You see? And so this is why I put body scanning and being able to pool your awareness in the body as the second skill. Yet another reason why it's the second skill I teach. Because as you gain more and more awareness of your body, you'll become more and more aware of your mental states because your mental states have correlates inside your body. And as you become more aware of those correlations of emotion and body, you can adjust the body in addition to adjusting the mind in order to create changes in your mental state. It can be very helpful, right? So hopefully this has been beneficial for everyone this evening. I think we ended up doing a bit more practice than I intended. But yeah, how did that go for everyone? Just put your comments in the chat, I suppose. So likewise, let's say that you're having trouble, you're trying to do some other kind of practice. You're sitting there in meditation, the shoulders causing problems. Ah, the shoulder, blah, blah. Okay, fine. The shoulder is too distracting to do the other practice you wanted to do today. What are you going to do? Well, you put the mind in the shoulder. Mind in the shoulder, right? And just absorb into the tissues until that's the main thing that your awareness is beholding. Just absorb without adjusting anything. And then just go and release anything that doesn't need to be held or clenched or tightened inside the shoulder, right? Maintain the structure, the elbows in the right position, everything roughly staying where it is, but anything that doesn't need to be clenched, tightened, held, whatever, release. So this is called neigong. It's an internal skill of working with your own body. So these skills can be incredibly helpful if you're trying to do longer sessions of meditation because you noticed, some of you, I'm hoping, that you're sitting there doing meditation, right? You're sitting there absorbing concentration on the neck, for example. And then you release, but you're still absorbed on the neck. And then you go here and you release, you're still absorbed on the neck. So if you were trying to train in concentration and some part of the body is not behaving, now you have a skill. You can draw the mind into some part of the body that's not behaving well, change what can be changed without leaving a state of concentration, and then carry on with the session. You see? So this is a tool that you have in your toolkit as a trainee. If you wanted to sit for 2 hours, you have a tool now to change the quality of the body from the inside without leaving the session, without needing to stop, without even leaving a state of concentration in order to adjust the body and continue with your training for that particular session. Okay. I've heard Astrali asks, I've heard it's all things appearing and disappearing and ever changing. Is that true? No, that's not true. If there was nothing unchanging, then we couldn't have an unchanging nirvana. But this is a class for practice. Usually Tuesdays or Thursdays I have an open Q&A. Happy to answer more general questions during those, but uh, try to keep it and try to keep it meditation related in this class. Okay, David Barnes, a lot of needed love and kindness for my stomach. Yeah, David, of course, if it's a health issue, talk to doctors, get get conventional help, medications, et cetera, et cetera. If it's just something sort of not behaving the way you would like, then also, I've had also in terms of body scanning stuff more generally to address who was it? House's comment. We jumped straight into trying to absorb into one part of the body, so your mind stayed chaotic. But if we did this full on, what you would do is 5 minutes of intensive breath, maybe a short break, maybe not. And then you would do a full body scan, and then you would absorb into places after the body scan, which are problematic. So, because we jumped basically straight from a very short intensive breath to trying to absorb the mind, the quality of mind didn't get as good before we started to try to do the main thing that I wanted to do today. But that was just a matter of time, right? Uh, if you were training a bit more sort of full on in the way that I teach in the five foundations, you'd spend 2 or 3 months doing intensive breath practice, get quite good at that, and then you would do body scans for a while. Again, 2 or 3 months to get good at body scans so that you could do something like this technique and have it be really effective. But in this class, I like to give people a little bit of a taste of different aspects of the practice since time is limited. Okay. Yeah, Strelly, Tuesday or Thursday, I'll have an open Q&A. This class is about less about theoretical issues and more about meditative practice. So whatever you're actually practicing today, happy to answer questions about that. Uh, Also, David, to go back to the stomach issue, to the degree that we have an ability to self heal, or at least to not be disturbed by our illness, right? I think, again, not a doctor, not claiming to be a doctor, and I don't want to make medical claims, but I think from what I've seen in the literature, because I've studied the meditation literature from a cognitive scientific point of view as a student of religion and philosophy, it was part of my master's work. If you do body scanning, it makes pain in terms of your actual neuronal response, it makes pain feel less painful. So if you do body scanning practices, even though the pain might stay the same, your mind becomes less disturbed by the pain. Okay. Yeah, yeah. This is good. So the body scanning will not necessarily make less pain, but according to the cognitive scientific literature, if you do good body scanning practices, even if it's the same amount of pain, your mind won't be disturbed by it as much, which will be a tremendous improvement in the quality of life, right? It also, the literature says that for some people, acute and chronic pain can be improved by doing body scanning practice. So the pain itself might also become less by doing these practices. Also, it goes without saying, things like qigong, neigong, 18 Lohan palm, that sort of stuff is designed to make your system become sort of the healthiest it can be at whatever stage of practice you're in or stage of health that you're in and so forth. Those sorts of systems are designed to improve overall health so that whatever you're dealing with in terms of specific health, right? They're meant to improve general health so that whatever you're dealing with in terms of your specific health issues become easier to deal with. So, yeah, I mean, if you're not just for you, David, because I think David, you're doing some of the Lohan stuff, aren't you? I can never keep track because I'm, I have names from Discord, and then there's names from here, and then there's names for people in real life, and I'm never quite quite sure from platform to platform who I'm talking to. Yeah, yeah. Well, David, reach out to me. Somebody put the Discord's link. Discord's just for communications, reach out to me on Discord. I'm happy to give you more specific instructions for body scanning and what have you to try to help you along in that practice. And then, yeah, if you want to do the Lohan stuff, those things are designed to improve the overall health of the body so that things are more comfortable over time, as comfortable as they can be as you get older and you have more health problems and so forth. You know, that's the one of the big intentions with these kinds of practices that are the in the Chinese health art category. They want to improve the general condition with low impact, easy to do stuff so that it becomes, you know, the whole system becomes as healthy as possible without having to do. Oh, luck. Yeah, I do private sort of conversations with people all the time. So I mean, I'm talking to people. I was right before this class had a conversation with one of the students. And also there's a class I have with a number of Sikh practitioners. We're meeting about once a week, I think, and it's sort of like it's on WhatsApp, so it's very similar to Zoom. Okay. Astrali practicing 112 meditations from one of the tantras, non-dualistic text. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so Astrali, whichever practices you're doing will benefit from the general technology of meditation. So if you're doing tantric practices already, if you have a few additional techniques that build up the individual skills related to training in tantra, then your overall ability to do tantra will be improved. So being able to cool your mind in a very small area while visualizing and mentally reciting, very important skill. Being able to place the mind in a non-dual state in any part of the body, very important skill. Being able to abide in a non-dual state of awareness on any of the six senses at will while placing the mind in certain places inside the body and visualizing and mentally reciting, very important skills. Being able, rumination meditation, foundation 5, being able to generate particular states of mind at will while doing these other things, very important skill, right? So if you train the individual skills related to doing much more complex tantric kinds of activities, then your ability to do the individual activities is improved by overall competence in the component skills making up the larger skill set. So this is again one of the sort of quieter reasons why I've assembled these practices in the way that I have. They're meant to prepare you for the most sophisticated kinds of practice that I've encountered. Yeah, David, definitely reach out to me. You can reach out on Facebook, reach out on the Discord server. Happy to help you understand what's going on, and yeah, the 18 Lohan practices are meant to help overall health. So, at 56, if the health is not so good and seems to be headed the wrong way, then through training, the general health condition can be made as good as it can be. This is the point. I'll give you one small example. This is just from the opening exercises of the Lohan system. It's everywhere, so it's no big secret, right? So the major organs of the body, in terms of the Chinese medical way of thinking about the body, the sort of main five are your lungs, your heart, your liver, and its spleen, and then the kidneys. Okay. So if I take my rib cage, if I keep my hips where they are and I take my rib cage, it's a bit hard to see. I'll turn this way. If I take my rib cage and I turn my ribs this way and keep my hips where they are, see that? So my hips are staying still. My heart or rib cage, upper ribs, chest cavity, whatever you'd like to call it, is moving. You see that? Notice how when I move this independent of the bottom part, see how it has to squeeze here. That's where my liver is. When I turn the other way, it squeezes here, which is where my spleen is. Also, because I'm rotating back and forth and I'm twisting the spine like this, look, my head stays here. I'm twisting the chest back and forth. So I'm taking the middle portion of my spine like this, and I'm rotating it like this, which means that the top and bottom are getting a twist. You see it? So I'm wringing the spine like a towel. And that central line that we were talking about is getting this workout, let's say, if this is staying still, is getting this workout of being wrung like a towel like this so that the whole spinal column all the way to the back of the neck is becoming more comfortable for seated practice. So you're working the heart, you're working the two major organs here. The only thing you haven't touched very much is the lungs and the kidneys. So how do you get the lungs and kidneys involved? Well, here's how they do this. You give them a small vibration, a tap, right? To get a little bit more sort of blood and whatever into that organ. So then the exercise looks like this. I turn my chest, keep my head facing forward, and I tap basically here or here. And then in the back, tapping where the kidney is. So then you massage the two big organs here, give the heart a nice set of rotational movements, vibrate the lungs, vibrate the kidneys. So the first part of the Lohan system, you do this exercise, which is pretty simple, low impact, but actually quite sophisticated because you're giving the spine a massage, you're giving the five major organs a massage or a vibration stimulation. And so pretty low impact, pretty easy to do, but in terms of the general health benefit and a sort of slow gradual way of building up your general health, it's very good. Doesn't take a lot of instruction or physical competence, but you're starting to learn how to move the spine as three independent pieces and to twist the spine and make the spine really comfortable. And you're giving each one of the organs a little bit of stimulation, each of the five major organs in the Chinese health system, way of thinking about the health system in terms of Chinese arts, right? So, in this way, you can start to improve the general condition of the whole system with one very simple sort of exercise, making the whole nervous system a little bit better by making the spine more comfortable and making the five major organs work a little bit better by stimulating them through massaging them or vibrating them for what it's worth, right? And so as the system builds up, the movements of the Lohan form, just as an example, would be something like this, right? Where I'm same thing, twisting here, twisting here, twisting here. And then when I untwist, right? So when you twist, sorry, got to get my brain working here. Here we go. Here we go. So when you twist, boom, 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 twisting the whole spinal column, and then release, one, two, three. You're learning how to twist the whole spinal column and untwist the whole spinal column. And because you're doing it in this position, you're building strength on one side of the spine while holding it straight. You see this? So the spine is still straight, stretched between those 2 points, and then you do the rest of the form. So then from here, same thing. 1, 2, 3, bang. So here, spine is twisting. 1, 2, 3, untwisting. 1, 2, 3, bang. So you're learning how to twist the whole spinal column while having it straight at an angle, right? Straight spine at an angle, building strength on one side of the spine while twisting it and untwisting it. So you're making the whole spine really strong and really comfortable in a low impact environment. And also, you can see there, same thing, same principle, massaging the major organs as you do the exercise. So it's interesting. Lohan Palm is very explicit in terms of keeping the health benefits of the system in the system while training it as an internal art. And then you build up the layers of qigong and so forth into it, and neigong eventually, seated practice, et cetera, for what it's worth. Okay, well, it looks like I have exhausted questions through my masterful demonstration. Yeah, if you can start to feel that twist, think about it also. Okay, as you get older, the hips aren't going to work very well, and you need the hips to work well to do good seated practice, right? So, what do? I tip this way, keeping the spine straight, right? My weight is over here on one leg. This is the third movement of the form. So I'm tipping the waist open, training the hips how to remain open. See this? In this whole line. And working on the flexibility of the hips all the way through. And then we come over here, blah, 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 blah. And then eventually we're doing it on this side, right? Same thing. Oh. So these are just a couple of demonstrations from the system, but you can start to see, oh, yeah, I can see directly how this relates to training in my seated practice. See what I mean? If I can get my hips to be open like this when I rotate through the full range of motion of the hips on both sides, now the hips are going to be a lot more comfortable. If you look at my hips, watch. When I'm rotating through, that's the full rotation for the hips, and the spine's at an angle, so it has to be strong in creating that line that stretches open from top to bottom to hold the weight, right? My weight, like we were talking about today, is being held by that stretchiness. See it? And then I twist that stretchiness and I unload it. And then I do a couple of other things, and then I stretch, work the hips, twist that stretchiness, and then unload it. So you're learning how to generate full body power, create the type of stretchiness you need for sitting, and then twist it, untwist it. You see what I mean? So now the stretchiness, let's say the elasticity that will hold the body up for sitting, is learning through movement how to be really strong. So now your seated practice will be easier. This is why I love this stuff. It really is the geniuses of working with the physical body that came up with all of this, you know? I mean, 100 generations of really smart people working with the body to figure out how to pack as much benefit into a few movements as possible. Let me give you one more example. This is part of the opening of the form. So my hips for many years weren't even. They were, I can't remember what this is called, but where they're slightly rotated like this. So the opening of the form, I'll show you from the side here, so you get to see my big fat belly. The opening of the form, you're turning the hands, it's coming up, sort of like a yoga form, right? And the hands come down. And then the next thing you do is you roll the spine down and then you bend your knees. And one of the interesting things that happens if you bend the knees while looking down with the spine curled like this is that you can see whether or not your hips are even based upon where your knees are. Because if your hips are uneven, as you can hopefully see from the side, if your hips are uneven, to put my hands on my knees, then your knees end up like this, right? They end up sort of not right. But this gives you really good feedback since it's hard to feel on whether or not the hips are in the right position. And then you roll the spine back up with the hips and knees in the right position. So this is starting the form, getting the body balanced in the right position. Again, if you're seated on the cushion and your hips are like this and you don't notice and you sit there for an hour every day for years, your spine's going to degenerate, your hips are going to degenerate, your knees are going to degenerate. And by the time you hit 50 or 60, you can't do the practice anymore. And I know a lot of people, or at least I know of a lot of people who have this problem. You see it? So this is this is why these systems have a physical component. Even the Tibetan tantras have tons of physical yoga aspects. They just don't teach you that stuff until you've been in the system 10 or 15 years and take empowerments, and it comes later. But the Shaolin lineages and Taoist lineages and some of the Hindu lineages, obviously, for they've gotten quite popular for yoga. They have this physical aspect much sooner. But uh, in my humble view, systems like Lohan, where they have the full stack of cultivation methods as one package, it offers something more than you'd get with popular yoga. Well, I mean, to be a little bit more precise, popular yoga stuff, for example, will have the physical stretching and the breathing, but that would be classified in this system under uh, something called doyen, which is basically like just stretching, right? Stretching, and then there's some breathing with the stretching. In addition to that, they have other things mm, like silk reeling, right? So silk reeling would be something like this. So I'd be taking the posture of the body. Once again, you get to see my fat belly. So I'd be taking the posture of the body and breathing into the upper cavity of the chest and stretching through the arms from the center of the spine. So there's tissue that connects like this to the upper part of the spine. And I use my breath and my arms. And if you watch the top of my head versus my knees, see how I'm letting my knees go down? Or I'll exaggerate. Watch the top of my head. I let my knees go down and keep my head where it is. You see that? So I'm pulling the whole spine like this. Same thing, hands stay where they are, head stays where it is, knees go as far down as they can. So I'm stretching, once again, that stretchy bit in the middle. And then you do another posture, stretch another part, do another posture, stretch another part. So there's just way more layers and layers and layers to making the whole system work and be better and better and better for your practice. And then it ties directly into Qigong, which involves the breath but has all these other elements. And then ties into neigong, which is even subtler than Qigong, right? As I sometimes say, neigong is like Shaolin's answer to the tantras. It's like the most important aspect of tantric training without having to do tantra. Very, 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 very interesting stuff. Okay. Well, that was interesting. I didn't know we would go that far into all of that. But to your point, David, because you're struggling with health stuff, there's a very progressive, low impact. There's a very progressive. My wife doesn't love the belly. Okay. See you, David. Uh, there's a very progressive, low impact way of starting to make the whole system function better. For those of you who are still hanging out, um, as you can probably tell, I don't do a lot of cardiovascular work, but to my surprise and my wife's surprise, uh, I live here in Edinburgh, and occasionally I go to Arthur's Seat, which is a little mountain in the center of the city. And even though I'm not running or doing anything other than internal arts, I can run up the side of that mountain. And yeah, I'm out of breath, but I think most people, even if they're in decent shape, running up the side of a mountain would be out of breath. But I can actually run up the side of a mountain despite the fact that I don't train in running and my heart rate rarely gets very high. But it's because these arts are designed to condition your cardiovascular health without having to elevate your heart rate in the same way as you might think in terms of conventional exercise. It's very fascinating. Also doesn't burn as many calories, unfortunately. So you've got to do that with your diet in a more intensive way. And I don't, obviously. Uh, but other than that, it's quite good for your health. And and quite good if your aim is to get better at meditation. You know, the whole thing is designed to stack internal skill upon internal skill until you have subtler and subtler aspects of your being that are manifesting so that you can work with those and carry on until you get to the subtlest things. Okay, my friends. Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Okay. Well, for those of you who do want to chat more, no, it's better. It's better. I think the Western doctors are right about this. If you maintain a figure that's a little slimmer than mine, which is where I'm headed soon, I hope, your overall health will be better. Doesn't mean you have to hate yourself. You just acknowledge that having extra weight probably won't help you, right? We know it's not probably not good for you. So don't do that or fix it if you can. Okay. Well, my friends, I think since that's it on questions, yes, if you want to hang out and chat more, go to the Discord. That's the best place. If you want to train in the five foundations a little bit more hardcore, jump into the five foundations course. That information is free on YouTube, of course, but I have arranged it much nicer on the school course, and that's a great way to support what I'm doing because all of this is only possible because of donations. Since I don't personally charge for anything that I don't also have available for free somewhere. So if you'd like to contribute and make sure that this gets to carry on from month to month, year to year, please do jump into something that is supporting it financially. Lohan Palm link is also down below. So if you'd like more information on that, there's a little free trial period that you get, and you'd be able to jump in and see the first few videos. I mean, the first video that way. Okay. All right. Well, hope to see you again very soon. Try not to disappear before I do. Cheers.